Hi, everyone. We are going to take a second just to let everyone join in before we start. And we want to make sure that we're live. Okay, great. It looks like we are live. So
looks like we made it. Yay.
Yay. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our 6th Friends in Fiction official book club meeting and our holiday show. My name's Lisa Harrison, and I'm in Atlanta, and I am joined by my fabulous co-host, Brenda Gardner, in South Carolina.
Hi, Brenda. Hi, Lisa and Mary Alice.
And I'm so excited because tonight we're discussing A Low Country Christmas with Mary Alice Monroe.
Hello, Merry Christmas.
Mary Alice is a New York Times bestselling author of more than 23 novels, including her latest, On Ocean Boulevard, which I have right here.
Ah, thank you.
It is the 6th installment of the Beach House series that we're such big fans of. Her beloved
Absolutely.
Beach House series introduces the memorable and captivating Rutledge family and their close friends. More than 7.5 million copies of her books have been published worldwide, with numerous accolades and awards. A Low Country Christmas, which we will be discussing tonight, won a 2017 Southern Book Prize in Fiction, awarded by the Southern Independent Booksellers Alliance. Even with all those accolades, we know her best as one of the Fab Five who we have grown to love so much, our friends in fiction authors who have brightened our Wednesdays during the pandemic. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Mary Alice Monroe.
Oh, thank you. We're sisters
Thank
in
you, Mary
Friends in
Alice.
Fiction.
Yay.
We're all the Friends in Fiction family.
We are.
Well, it's wonderful to have you, Mary Alice.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to just mention as we get started with tonight is how amazingly your novels seem to always involve really complex interrelationships and parallels between people and nature.
Yes.
And my favorite quote that I posted on our book club page from this book is about Taylor when he returns home from the war, and he's talking about how similar the desert and the ocean is, and it was just so fabulously put. So I just
You have that quote?
Oh, I can get that quote.
Well, the
Maybe
reason
while-
I'm curious, I was going to read something, but that actually is a really good thing to read.
Oh,
I
wonderful.
forgot it, as a writer, you don't remember all the lines you've written, but when the time comes, that would be beautiful, because I
Okay.
think people don't think of the desert is really very vibrant and cool. And anyway, thank you, because that was a great quote. I remember writing that.
Oh, wonderful. There was a whole paragraph that I put in the page, and a lot of people, identified with it. But we'll share questions about the book in a few moments. But would you mind, Mary Alice, just telling us a little bit about the book and how it came to be, from your perspective as the author?
Yes, it is. There are some books that I, by design, write, and there are some books that I call gifts. And I don't know who gives them to me. I'm writing one right now, and I think a great master, and I'll talk about that next year on the book club when it comes out. But I remember when I wrote The Beach House, the original Beach House, that came to me as a gift. And I just knew what I had to write. And when I wrote Second Star to the Right, which is if you've never read that, that's a fanciful book about a woman who believes she's Peter Pan's Wendy. And she came to me in a dream, and I wrote her book like in 3 weeks. And
Wow.
this one was, here it is, which I love this. I know there's a paperback. This is the one I love because it's the hardcover, but it's that lovely gift hardcover. And I wanted it to be under $20 because I wanted people to be able to put it in a stocking or, you know, a hostess gift. I love the size. So Simon Schuster really great to do that for me.
I love that
I
cover. This is,
don't
I have this cover.
now that must be the library cover,
Yeah,
is it?
I
Because
think
we still
so.
there's a lot of discussion for a movie, and we kept back the trade paperback size for that, and it's still under discussion because everyone wants me to make the book sweeter. So imagine if I was inspired. This is a tough book in the sense that I don't pull any punches about what it's like to live in the Low Country as a shrimping family. It's like, imagine the movie The Family Stone. If they said, no, sweeten it up. No, it wouldn't have the punch. Or It's a Wonderful Life, which actually was my model for writing the book. In that book, it's one of my favorite films. But in that movie, the guy's about ready to jump off the bridge at the beginning of the movie. And he changes his mind to save someone, but his whole life is a reflection, and he suffers. But at the end, you've suffered with him. So when he makes the change and he's running off at the end, Mary, and he's crying out, you're with him more than if it's just a sweet story, to my mind. So I loved that. And when I wrote this book, I'll tell you where it came from. I had been writing the Low Country series, which is Summer Wind, Summer Girls. I have to think about it. Summer Girls, Summer Wind, The Summer's End, and A Low Country Wedding. And during the research of that time, I was working with dolphins every year at the Dolphin Research Center in Florida. And I worked with wounded warriors at the Dolphin Research Center. And I became very emotionally attached to the project. And we would bring the wounded warriors in. And at the beginning, you would have a group of 17 or 18 men from all areas of the military. And, you know, they would be in their groups and they'd be tough and no one would talk to each other. They all had PTSD, which is why they were here. And some of the men had scars, some were missing limbs, and some no scars because it was the invisible scar of PTSD. And the first thing that we did was throw them into the water with the dolphins. And I tell you, the dolphins were amazing. They did know they were different. They treated them with more care and gentleness, like a child. If a man was missing a limb, they would echolocate to figure out something's different here. And if they had shrapnel, they'd come up and they'd echolocate, which is, I've been echolocated, and it means they use a sonar and it tingles. And so the guys would be, what's he doing? What's he doing? Because they were a little freaked out. They saw the shrapnel in the body and what is that? That's different. And they do the same with pregnant women. So at that point, what was really, really beautiful to watch was how the men relaxed with the dolphins. They had a little bit of a childlike experience. And they went from here up against the wall. No one's going to go in first. You know who the first guy was? The first group I had, the first guy I had was all these big burly guys were like groups of 6 on a platform knee deep in the water, and one had to jump in with the dolphins. And they all had their life preserver on. And I remember I did the life preserver of this one man who had no arms. And he just was like, well, do it real tight, you know. Think of the courage it took to go in the water with no arms.
Wow.
And so I did it real tight. And all the guys are like, I'm not going in first. I'm not going in first. This man with no arms jumped in. And the dolphin came right under him and lifted him up. After that, the guys were jumping in. And it was so great. So I had several experiences with these Marines over the course of years. And some of them had their dogs. And that was the relationship I was really curious about. And they were right, the men who were connected to their service dog. The dog was always right there. And I remember I wrote about it in the book, the series, that not the Christmas book, where the dog came up to the edge of the platform and the dolphin was coming up out of the water. Everyone was holding their breath and the dog got a little closer. It was a black lab and the dolphin was bobbing up with its rostrum, they're sticking up. And of course they touched. And we all started crying. It was just so beautiful. So I knew there was something there with the dog and the relationship. And I remember one man who took me under his wing and talked to me about his relationship with his dog. He was the one I designed my character after in this book. And he told me his story. And I remember one line he said, "I love my wife, but I need my dog." And I thought that was a real confession. And he told me about waking up in the middle of the night and some of the trauma they have when they don't know where they are. And people can get hurt in the middle of the night. So all this to say, I finished the series and I carried in my heart for a long time wanting to write about the service dog. And it would have been about, and I used Taylor, the character in those series. And it's not a series book. And I keep fighting with the listing. It's not a series book, but if you read the Low Country series, you know the character. It's before it began, when he first came home from Christmas. And I love Christmas. It's my favorite time of year. And I always believe that the mother is responsible for everyone to have a happy Christmas. Come on.
And that's not in the book, is it?
It's like the cooking, the cleaning, the decorating is like everybody's got to be happy, because if they're not happy, they're not blaming dad, they're blaming mom. So
right.
she is so excited that Jenny, they're a shrimping family, and they're in McClellanville, which is an actual community and one of the few remaining shrimping communities along the Southeast. It's such a beautiful community. I described it just exactly as it is. And this is a shrimping family down on their luck because, in fact, it's a vanishing industry. I wrote a book about it, Last Light Over Carolina.
Which was fabulous.
Thank you. And it's the only book to this day that's written about the shrimping families. And if, the guys can't make a living, bottom line, because of imported shrimp. So the father just had to put his boat up on the dock. He was out of luck. He couldn't make a living. So they're financially strapped. That's the setting. The young Marine comes home and he's got PTSD and he knows it's going to be tough. And Mama is thinking, our Christmas gift is Taylor's coming home. And then 10-year-old Miller, all he wants for Christmas is a dog. His best friend's dog had puppies, and you know how it is when you see those puppies. You want a dog. It doesn't matter if it's a purebred or you just want that puppy. So it's the story of a family under duress at Christmas. But the subplot is the story of A Christmas Carol, because that is a story of forgiveness and redemption. And it's how a family, like A Wonderful Life, comes together. And there's a moment at the end when it's just that gathering of joy. And it's a really great book. And I have to tell you, I wrote this book in about 6 weeks.
Wow.
It was in my heart for 6 years. And I remember my publisher said, I've got to write this book. No, we want you to. I said, I'm writing this book and you can buy it or not. And they said, well, we'll buy it. It'll just be your gift. They did nothing. They put it out and there was no promotion. That I just didn't care. I wanted people to read it. This is the only one of my books, and it won the Southern Prize for Fiction, which a lot of us are nominated for that prize. If you're a finalist, it's a good deal, but to win it is huge. And I just am so thrilled, because it showed that sometimes the book, is special. The book that
Mhm.
is, it's not, I don't know how to explain it, but it was like when I wrote The Beach House, I knew when I put it out there, it was like magic for me. And it was the
Oh.
book, my first New York Times hit. And when I put a Low Country Christmas out there, even though I didn't care, they didn't do any promotion. I just went, I want this out there. And it's really great. And it will be a movie. It's just, I turned down options. I want it to be the right producer and it's got to be the right one. It's just such a great story. And I don't say
Oh.
that as the writer, I say it as someone who up there who gave me the gift.
Well,
So I hope everyone enjoys it.
I'm sure they will, and they already have. I was going to
Yeah.
say it's kind of like the book chose you
It
because,
did.
you
Mhm.
know, because it gelled in that amount of time. That's just amazing. Thank you
That
so
is
much.
amazing.
You know, the
For those-
Marines,
6 weeks?
what,
Pardon?
6 weeks. That's
Wow.
exactly, by the way, how long it took Dickens to write A Christmas Carol.
Oh
That
my
I did
gosh,
not
Mary Alice.
know, and that is a good segue into the next question. I did want to mention that the PTSD as a subject matter for a Christmas
Yeah.
book was a couple of our readers had asked about that. You've already answered their questions, but it's just
Mhm.
interesting how many people were interested in the background of why you chose PTSD.
Well, I wanted to say, I was hoping it was right up here. There was a quote, but the Marines, I'm going to get it wrong, but the organization that helps PTSD
Mhm.
endorsed the book and encourage it. So it's if you know anyone who has PTSD or a family that is struggling with PTSD, it gives you a glimpse into not only PTSD and some of the common issues facing it, but I was all behind the service dogs. And what I loved about this particular service dog are the programs that choose dogs from shelters. And they pick the dog, and they give them a personality test. The people at the shelter know which dogs have promise, but they have to pass a personality test, and then they have to go through rigorous training before they are even offered to anyone. And they choose the right dog for the right person. Because sometimes
Mhm.
a Marine or a soldier might say, I'm a big guy and I want a German Shepherd. And that might be the exact wrong dog for them. So they'll know that maybe what you need is a little tiny poodle. It's the personality, because sometimes what they think they need is not going to help their weakest point.
Mm.
And one of the things that I discovered, what that man meant when he said, I love my wife, but I need my dog, is that I witnessed for myself that relationship. The dog is reading into every signal that woman or man gives off. When they're asleep at night, they catch the bad dreams. They go outdoors and they stand in front if there's anything they think would not be dangerous, just spook the person. It's a truly symbiotic, miraculous relationship. So to my mind, in It's a Wonderful Life, Clarence was the angel, and it changed Jimmy Stewart's life. And in my novel, the service dog is the angel that transformed everyone's life.
Oh, that's beautiful. And
That
you
is
may
so
have just given
beautiful.
people a hint about what your favorite movie is on the Facebook page.
You heard it here first.
Yes, you heard it here first. Well, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go back to something you mentioned a minute ago. And Lisa, I know we're encouraging questions in the live chat, and Lisa's going to pull a couple of those in just a few minutes. But I wanted to ask again, you mentioned about A Christmas Carol, and it played a very prominent role in this novel. Could you tell us, Michelle Marcus would like to know what your connection is to the story, to the Dickens story, and what kind of connections you hope your readers will make to it.
I have studied Dickens, seriously, not just loved his books, for 20 some years. And I spent last winter with experts going to every location for his novels. And if you go, I'll post some more pictures, but I went to the Rochester Festival and it's been an amazing experience. So, and I'll continue to write books that are set against his. For this one though, what I loved about A Christmas Carol, and I think is often overlooked, is it really is a story of redemption and forgiveness. And I do have actual lines from the book in the book. And I always do that to pepper it, just for those people who know the actual text, they'll be surprised, not overdone. And I did that in Second Star for the Right with James Barrie in the Peter Pan. If you read that book, you'll see actual dialogue, and everything is pretty accurate about what I include in that book. That's a joy for me for those readers who love the classics. I like to put that in there. For this particular book, though, it's divided in sections, and I have quotes from the text of Christmas Carol. And I put it there to give it a sense of the tone. I think there's one on Scrooge, and I hope I get it right, about it was dark and darkness was cheap and Scrooge liked it. I mean,
Love it.
a great
Love
line. But it was about it's when he was falling into his PTSD. So I tried to constantly use A Christmas Carol, because at the end, there is that sense of joy and redemption at the end of the book, of my book, as well as Dickens's book.
Absolutely. That's so well put. I want to quickly mention too, I saw a Q&A that you did a while back in the Post and Courier, the Charleston paper, and you described it to them as Taylor feels like a Scrooge and carries the book as a talisman. As a vet suffering with PTSD, A Christmas Carol helped him believe that redemption was possible. I thought that was a neat connection between Taylor and the Scrooge and how he used the book.
Yes.
So Lisa, do we have any questions from the chat for Mary Alice?
Yes, I have a comment and I also have a question, but I wanted to share this comment from Christy Moore. She says, "Thank you so much for writing this book. My brother fought his PTSD demons to the very end, and you wrote how life is living with someone you love that has PTSD so perfectly in this book." So she wanted to thank you for that. And
Thank you for writing that. Thank you for writing that.
I have a question from my mom, Joyce. She says, "I'd like to thank you for addressing the struggles of the many men and women who suffer from PTSD. Being from the Vietnam era, I've witnessed it firsthand." She wanted to know if the people that you interviewed, do you stay in touch with those people that you interviewed for the book?
Not the soldiers. I sort of respect their privacy and let them go. I'm still in close contact with the people from the Dolphin Research Center, and I promised them a children's book. So I had to finish my contracts. You know, I have so many contracts, and I can do that. So I was actually going to go this year. That was the plan, but I'm not going this year. So it's in the Keys in Florida, but I do keep in contact with them, and I will write that children's book.
We can't wait.
Now there's something to look forward to.
Well, think about this is the story about. Well, I better not say it. I'm just gonna.
Oh no, we like
just say
revealing
it's
news
coming.
here.
Another dolphin book is coming.
Yeah, we love the breaking news. They're like, "Oops, you heard it here first."
Well, let me give you a hint. Dickens will be very much involved in my next book.
Ooh.
Yay.
Ooh.
I'm writing it now. I've actually been writing it for 18 years.
Okay.
Wow.
It's a book that this was the gift I told you came to me. And it's been a book that when I write, for the last 20 years, I was on a mission. I really was. I devoted myself to writing books that were set against an environment, like dolphins or turtles. And I wanted to create characters that brought that to life. And 20 years I've done that. And I'm very proud of looking at that body of work. And I'm not going to stop necessarily, but I'm moving to write all those other books that I've put aside for a while. So I'm going to always, the environment is part of who I am, but there are going to be some surprises coming. I'm going to have some fun.
Oh, well, we are looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are.
But it's a wonderful thing to be at this point in one's life, to look back over 20 years and to see a body of work that had a mission for 20 years. And it succeeded. It really did. I think a lot of people have felt that I very rarely get a letter from someone who doesn't love the book and the characters, but also say, I learned a lot. And that means so much to me. It really does, that I've made a small difference in my lifetime. And speaking of Charles Dickens, that was his goal. He wanted to affect change for those urchins in the street who had such a hard life. And I feel like if I could make a small difference in my lifetime, then that was the mission of 20 years. And this is just, this is not one of them. This book totally stands alone. You know, there are shrimpers in it, and yes, there's a dog in it, but it's a standalone novel. The whole message is about Christmas. It's just as much a story in my mind of the mother who had to save the family, you know, the weight of being the mother, of the little boy who thought his Christmas was being ruined, and of the soldier with PTSD. It's how PTSD doesn't happen just to the soldier. It happens to the family.
So true.
And I wanted everyone to see that it was a redemption for them all, which made it all the happier at the end. I mean, think about your Christmases. Aren't you the one who feels I got to bake the cookies? You know, my husband's not worried about making cookies. You know, I put the decorations up.
That's right. And it's an interesting parallel. You know, this is a very serious Christmas book, and yet it's an uplifting book, but it's kind of an interesting book to have during these times when we're all struggling so much with the pandemic and everything else. And then we're struggling just as Taylor was struggling.
That's you know what? Thank you so much.
If I could take a moment, Lisa. Okay. You are welcome. Lisa, if there's more from the chat, I'm going to mention one question that was posted in advance from Laura Alcon Brown, and I think this is a fabulous question. Mary Alice, you wrote some in the voices of Miller, Taylor, and Jenny. Did you find it difficult switching back and forth so the character stayed true to his or her character?
It's the only book that I've ever written first person. And I loved it. And I did it for, you know, every book I write, I look at how is the best way to tell this story. And I usually like third person. I like to read third person, but because I knew I was trying to choose characters based on how to show the family was enduring this Christmas, I chose first person. And when I wrote the 10-year-old boy, Miller, I knew it was so easy for me. It just bubbled out that I knew I could write middle grade books. And I did. So it was because of that I said, I can do that.
And that was the birth of the middle grade book that's coming up?
Exactly.
Ah, how about that?
Yeah.
It's all connected. It's all connected.
I know.
Because I wrote that first person.
It's the voices were just so true. I'm glad that she questioned. Lisa, do we have something coming up in the chat?
Yes, I do have a question from Laura Beth Eastman. She says that she loved the discussion of Christmas traditions and wondered what traditions you have with your family and if any of them are in the book.
Oh gosh. other than, I think she makes a turkey, which is something I always make. No, not a lot, other than, the mother. I really felt the mother's role. But that's not a tradition. The traditions in my family are every year we have the fathers. I don't know if you remember this discussion, that we have the father makes the dinner for Christmas Eve. He doesn't go to church. And in the book, they all go to the theater and the father doesn't go. But in our family, it's more that he contributes. He's not a churchgoer, but he contributes to the evening. So when we come home from church, he has dinner for us, and he's cooked it all himself, and he set the table, and it's a very welcoming event. And so that is the tradition that we're now on Christmas Eve. My only son is doing it as well. So it's continuing. The son-in-law is not so much. I guess they didn't grow up with it. But if you have Christmas Eve in my house, all the men have to cook and the women don't cook. So that's
I like that tradition.
I do too. I think I should write a book on that.
I can get behind that. I like that
I
one.
could get behind that one too. That's
when
hilarious.
we come home from church, my husband has champagne for us to walk in the door.
Oh,
Nice.
that is just fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Mary Alice, I'd like to change gears a little bit, if that would be okay.
Sure.
Lisa and I, when we were talking in advance, we were very interested in the short stories that you and Patty wrote for the Reunion Beach, which is coming up April 27th publication, the tribute to Dorothea Benton Frank. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, for the background of that is after Dottie died, which shook us all. And she and I were, neighbors as well as friends. And she left a void. And so her publisher, her editor, Carrie Farron, who I've known her since she was an assistant editor. She was trying to think of some way to commemorate, to honor Dottie. And she came up with the last book she was starting to write was called Reunion Beach. And so she presented an idea to those of us who were her friends. So that would be me and Patty and Ellen Hildebrand, Adriana Trigiani. And I know Gervais Haggerty is a voice you want to pay attention to. I'm going to be introducing her on Friends and Fiction. But she's from Charleston and she's a wonderfully gifted young author who knew her very well. So and there were also a poem from Marjorie Wentworth, who is the poet laureate, and Natalie Dupree's recipe. It's just a love letter.
Oh, wow.
So we were supposed to come up with our own idea for Reunion Beach, some sort of a reunion on the beach. And I wanted to write about a birth mother, who after 30, almost 40 years, finally meets her daughter for the first time since she released her into adoption. And it was really beautiful. I think it might be one of the best things I've ever written. And it was my first short story. And it was it was sort of like a gift again. I just wrote from my heart. And interestingly enough, it does begin on the beach with a turtle lady, because I immediately resonated with the idea of when you release a hatchling and you watch, especially from a nest that has already emerged, and you maybe only have one or two hatchlings, we call them babies. And you release it out into the water and you watch it scramble, and then it goes and you never see that hatchling again. I thought the parallel for a woman who was about ready to see her child that she released into the world was so powerful. And I think all the stories are remarkable. Patty wrote a beautiful story, and Adriana, everyone wrote from their heart. So I think it's going to be a very powerful collection of stories.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Mary Alice. That one is going to be available for pre-order, and it's in April. So we're really looking forward to reading all of those stories from.
I can't wait to read that. I
Yeah.
love that you guys kept the title too, Reunion.
Yeah,
Beach.
that was the theme because of that title. It was a theme for
Yeah.
all our stories. So everyone put a story pretty much on the beach. Adriana's is kind of a stretch. I read it. It's not really on the beach. But that's all I'm going to say about that. You'll have to read it yourself.
Okay, great.
Well, I do have a question. One of the things I wanted to know was the names of the characters. Did they mean anything to you? How do you usually pick the names for the characters? And especially for this book,
Yeah.
how did you pick the name Thor for the service dog? I
Right.
loved that. I loved it.
Don't you? Well, for Thor the dog, he was so big.
Yeah.
And I just thought, and muscular, I just thought that for some reason it was just the name because Thor, God of thunder, we all, and I love the
Yeah.
character. Taylor he was the Marine in the Low Country series, but it was before he met any of the people in the story. So it's like precedes it, so it stands alone. But he was named after an actual Marine. And Jenny, I just looked for names that were Low Country names, Miller. I sound a lot of names out. Blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden I hear it and I go, that's it. Occasionally for a books, like I will choose a name because it directly is associated with, like Eve in the book club. She gave birth to she was the originator of the book club. So Eve from the Garden of Eden. So that was easy. And all the characters in that book are from authors. And all the characters in the Low Country series are the authors that the father loved. So Rachel Carson is Carson. And Harper is obviously Harper Lee. And Doris is Doris Lessing. So each of those, it was authors that the father loved. But for this book, other than Taylor and Thor, who I just loved size, it was because they were Low Country names that just rang true.
It's
Wow,
really,
I love that.
I know, it's fascinating because naming the characters is really an art because it's kind of like you can go through a lot of iterations and then suddenly that's it.
No, when you know the characters, and sometimes you name a character and you change it because it doesn't suit. The more, especially the primary character, my primary character is often the weakest character at the beginning of a novel because she's the one I'm working. I'm the most identified with. So when I get through the whole novel, I'm beginning to dig her out, and then I sometimes change the name.
That's just bad.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a tough thing. I mean, it's also instinctive. Speaking of Dickens, he used to just name off. He collected names, and I do that too. And when I sign names, I say, "Ooh, tell me about that name." Like Sarah June, I used that in the book. I said, "I've never heard that before," but he was like, "What was that name again?" And I keep a list of names I love. And Dickens would write names down and play with names until he hit it. Like Scrooge, you just can't come across that name easily. That's
Oh, and of course now it's synonymous with that character.
Exactly. Or any person who's miserly, right?
Right. But it would have been certainly not that way back
if
then.
his name was Smith. Oh, Smith. He's such a miser. Scrooge.
It would have a whole different feel, wouldn't it?
It sure would.
Definitely.
Mr. Macabre.
Oh,
Mr. Peck-and-Sniff. Now think about that one for a minute. Mr. Peck-and-Sniff. Yeah, that's from Martin Chuzzle, but that's a name you got to think about.
Absolutely.
Well, I do have a few more questions from the chat. But one thing that's overwhelming, everyone is thanking you for your stories. Thank you for being so open and sharing with us. And they're so thankful that you wrote this book about PTSD. There's just so many comments about that. I couldn't read them all, but definitely
Thank
a
you. That
theme
means
in
the
book.
world to me. That's why I wrote the book. I mean, and it's my tribute to this. My son's a Marine. So it's a tribute to all the men and women in the services who have fought for us, but also who have come back with PTSD. And a couple, one in particular, who didn't make it. And it's serious. And I honor, I mean, for me, it's just about making it. I believe that whenever there's an illness of any kind, you talk about it. You bring, there's no shame.
Yeah.
You know, especially if you're a serviceman, no shame. It's a wound that you have honorably received. And so we need to do everything we can to both be aware and to honor it because they're suffering from that. And I'm so pleased that now PTSD is an open conversation and it's recognized. But think of, as you mentioned earlier, Vietnam, when they were just considered lost.
Yeah.
And I think they called it shell shock.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe not even back then, but pretty long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So at least we have a name for it and we can talk about it.
And
Yeah.
it's a clinical, a diagnosis.
Yes.
Now I'm
But
shifting.
before people, though, I don't want them to think it is his syndrome, but the story is just as much about the mother working to try and make Christmas. It's about the little boy who wants his dog, you know, who's like, and then his brother gets the dog. He's like, what? I wanted the dog, and Dad said we couldn't afford a dog, and he gets the dog. It's like, how unfair. So it's really about these family dynamics. And I think, I don't want to spoil what happens at the end, but it all comes together to show their best selves come forth.
That's so true. I felt so bad for Miller, though. I could not
Wow. That
help it
scene,
when the service dog showed up.
Worst
it
Christmas
broke my
ever.
heart.
Especially
broke
because his
my
mother
heart.
said they had no money, and the mom is going, oh, Taylor's coming home. That's our present. And a 10-year-old's going, that's my present.
Yes.
You know, you're 10 years old. You don't want your brother for Christmas.
You definitely captured the heart and mind of a 10-year-old with Miller too, for sure.
Well, I'm
Totally
one of
did.
10 brothers and sisters, so I know.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you would know that well.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Lisa, go
Yes.
ahead.
I've got a question from Connie Cooper, and she would like to know if you were ever a teacher.
Oh, does it show? Oh, yes. I have K through 12. I'm certified K through 12. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It was
Awesome.
I loved it. It was a calling, and I think I was very happy teaching. It's just I was put to bed with my pregnancy with Zachary, my third child, and I was actually put to bed twice, but it was the last one when the doctor said, you know, you can't go back. You can either have a child or you go back to teach.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
when I started writing my first novel, In Bed. And that was published, and that was The Long Road Home. And I never looked back. I mean, ever since I was a little girl, I knew I was a writer, but I loved teaching. And I think that's probably is indicative. You can see that in my novels, that I'm not a teacher in my novels, but I found a way to bring the world alive. It's because I don't want to teach in my novels. I'm a storyteller.
Right, but you educate by story, and that's
That's
Yeah.
it. That's it.
fabulous.
I
Now,
don't like novels where the writer's telling you what
Oh
to
yeah,
do.
shaking their finger.
Yeah.
No. That's not my job.
Well,
They
I
don't
know.
resonate well with you when they're
I don't think
telling
they
you what to
know, you know, honestly, when they do that, I don't think they know their subject material well enough to let it go and let it be imbued in the plot and themes and settings. It has to be something you're so familiar with, you can bring the reader to your world. If you're just copying it out of a book, I don't mean this derogatory, but you don't really know that world. And I think there's a difference. So you have to be careful not just as a novelist, if you have a message, it has to be something that is honest and true, and you know that area so well. Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a finger pointer. And no one reads fiction for finger pointing. I don't.
Yeah.
You know, don't you
Well
agree?
said. Well said.
Write nonfiction if you want to do that.
That's right. Now, I know Lisa has a question for you about Andy McDowell, but I did want to let you know I located that spot in a Low Country Christmas about the
Oh, would
passage
you
about
read
the
it?
desert.
Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping you would read it, but
What page is it? What are
it's
you in the
chapter
hardcover or
4. It's chapter 4, about the 3rd page.
Okay, let me get that for you. I can find that. Here we are.
It's a treat to hear you read it.
That's why I was thinking they don't want to hear me read it.
Chapter 4. I'm in a forage. I'm not there. Oh, the Christmas forage.
Oh no, the desert and the ocean.
What page are you in, the paperback or the
I'm in the
hardcover?
Kindle.
Oh, the Kindle.
Did that not help? Okay. Well, I
It
can
wasn't
read it if
chapter 4. Why don't you read that part?
okay,
Yeah.
now I have to get back to it. I am so sorry.
Well, while you're waiting, I found this was a little interesting. Oh, I love this. The mother goes out every year for her Christmas forage because they don't buy decorations. They go out into the woods. And that's a very Southern thing, to go out and gather your own decorations. And she said, Mama's eyes gleamed as she picked up her coffee cup. It's time for the Christmas forage. The Christmas forage was an outing that we went on every year. Our mission was to collect pine and fir branches, holly, pine cones, and whatever other decorations caught our eyes in the woods. It was special, just the 2 of us. No one else came along. She called me her Christmas helper, but I always teased back that I was really her Christmas slave. I looked up at her smiling face, and her eyes were bright with hope. She knew I was still mad at her about the dog, right? And Daddy, that my heart was still aching for the dog. But I knew she felt bad about it and was trying to make me feel better. I wanted to stay mad, but this was our special time. And when I saw that hope in her eyes, I just couldn't hurt her. I loved her too much. So I caved. I nodded and went back to my breakfast. I had to save face after all. That was Miller, 10-year-old Miller. But that whole concept of going out in the woods and gathering your decorations is such a Southern thing.
Oh, I love
love
that.
it.
I think
Yeah.
that worked out just as it needed to. Because that was a beautiful passage. I think we
Yeah.
even talked about that one on our Facebook page. Now we
Well,
just have, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
When you look at the Southern house, and you have to make sure that there are no bugs in your moss, but you collect all the magnolia leaves, and you just make your own decorations from what you find out. If you have a pittosporum, big old shrub, you just flip, 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 and that's the greens for your tree. It's just so beautiful, and it's free.
I
And
know.
you go outdoors while you get it.
And it's
I
such
would-
an adventure.
I would
is.
love to do that. This introduced me. I've never heard of that before. I'm originally from Chicago, but I live in Atlanta now. And when I was reading that, I thought this would be so much fun. I would love to do this.
It is. We take a little wagon or backpacks, and up in North Carolina, we have a mountain house, and a tree was during the big storms we had, some of the limbs fell down. And I was so thrilled because it was a longleaf pine, and I can't get that high to get them. But I was able to clip all these beautiful boughs with longleaf pines, needles hanging down. And boy, did I have good decorations this year.
Oh, that's fabulous. I thought about that passage when we picked out our Christmas tree this weekend, because the woman cut the bottom branches, and I remember thinking, wait, I might be able to do something with that.
Oh, take them home. Always take them home.
Only because of your book.
That's gold.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, everyone in the chat is they're just so happy that you read that passage. And I was going to ask a question about Andy McDowell, but I kind of wanted to ask you, you're such a great narrator, and you do your own audio books. And that's something that a lot of the people on our page have mentioned and love. What is do you just enjoy to do it yourself, or what's the reason that you picked to do it yourself as opposed to
Well, I
getting?
studied acting when I was younger, so I knew that I had some training. And then I remember when Brilliance Audio first made an offer for the beach house. No, it was swimming lessons. And I said I would like to audition because if I didn't, and that was just before I met anyone, I said, I just want to audition because if my voice isn't right, the last thing I want is to be the author with this horrible voice that no one wants to hear. So I went to College of Charleston and I went to the studio and I auditioned and they wrote back and said, absolutely. So I was the first one I did. And I didn't go back and read my old books. But ever since the Beach House on, I've read all the books, with the exception of the last two. And that's because when I did the summer guests, there were so many foreign accents. I was worried, and men, that I just thought I'd better leave it to a professional. And Cassandra Campbell was great. And then last year, I couldn't travel. I wouldn't because of COVID. And so they gave it to Cassandra again. And I couldn't go to New York to do the recording. So, but I fully intend to read the next one and the children's book. I love it. You know, it's hard work. You're in a studio with your earmuffs or your earphones or whatever, and it's very intense. If your stomach growls, or you know, you don't forget your tongue is a muscle, and if it gets weak and you slip, you go back. So it's about a week, about 6 to 8 hours a day for 5 days or longer.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I love to do it. And I think because my readers enjoy listening to my voice, I do it for them too, because I know I like to hear the author. If they do a good job, I really love it.
Yeah. I love it. And I find myself now when I read your books, like when I read the physical books, I still hear your voice in my head when I'm reading.
Oh my goodness, Lisa, that's good to know. Thank you.
I totally did when I was reading Low Country Christmas this weekend. I could just hear your voice, and it just made it that much better, you know.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I love that you do that.
I appreciate that. It's nice because not a lot of people talk about, oh, look who just came to say hello. There we go.
Oh,
This is Luna,
Luna is beautiful.
almost a year old, and she's having a bad hair day.
Hey, that's all right.
She's a puppy.
She's at home, so well,
I have a lot.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a lot of calves. Yeah, if you look at my pictures, you'll see a lot of my cavaliers.
Oh, they're just beautiful.
Thank you.
I can't believe it. This hour has flown by.
oh my gosh.
I can't believe
It
it,
was-
but I'm so glad that we asked that question about the narration. But we do want to give you a chance. We do want to give you a chance, Mary Alice, to talk about your upcoming novel as well as your middle grade book, if you'd like, what you'd like to share about that.
I'm very excited. The new book is for the adults. It's coming out May 11th, The Summer of Lost and Found. And it wasn't, you know, I've been writing the Beach House series for a while, and I finished the last book with On Ocean Boulevard was Kara, I think, coming full circle. And in this book, I introduced the next generation. But I can't call it that because Star Trek already took that title. So, as also, I did not anticipate the pandemic. And so I write about families, and I wanted to write about the changes I witnessed, but also we're all experiencing, not negative, just how we're adjusting and changing. And also I've gotten a lot of beautiful memories from the pandemic as well. So this is the story of this summer. I wrote it in real time. Now, I'll never do it again. It was very, very hard because you had to rewrite, because as you go through it, your perceptions and your perspective changes on what we're experiencing. And I really know I said what I wanted to say at the ending, but it really is about how these are tough times and delays and troubles. But in the end, we had some great moments. And there's some things we look back on and say, I'm not going to stop doing that. That's something I want to continue. So that's the summer of Lost and Found. And then my middle grade book, which I'm super excited about. I wrote this with Angela May, who is my 10-year assistant. And it's my first, this is Miller's voice taught me, but it takes place on an island. And it's 3 kids who would be unlikely friends. And there's a girl, a military boy, Brad, whose father's injured, and African-American boy from Atlanta. And they're on this island called Deweese off Isle of Palms, which exists. It's a nature sanctuary. No cars, no stores, no internet. So the kids are like unplugged and they're thinking, worst summer ever. And because it's what we want our kids to do, they go outside and they have to learn to discover and play. And there's turtles in it, of course, but you're on an island in Deweese. But also one thing that I loved is the grandmother's relationship with the grandson. And there aren't a lot of books that have boys who are really important. And I think those key elements make this book very special. So it's called The Islanders, by the way, The Islanders, and it's coming out in June 15th.
Okay, that's
So all these hullabaloos will go on Friends and Fiction. We'll have our lunch.
well.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll hear more about it, but we wanted to definitely cover that. So those are available for
you.
pre-order, and we're really excited about both of those.
Thank you.
Mary Alice, we want to say just a special thank you for joining us tonight. It's been so much fun, especially so close to Christmas. We appreciate you sharing your time with us. For our readers, be sure to tune in this Wednesday night on the Friends and Fiction page, because I hear that there's going to be an ugly sweater party.
Oh, you don't want to miss this one. I had so much fun getting in my ugly sweater. We all did. It was great.
Well, we are excited about doing that on Wednesday night. That will be at 7 p.m. on the Friends and Fiction page. Our next book discussion will be our New Year's party with Mary Kay Andrews on Monday, January 18th, talking about or discussing Ladies' Night. So,
Oh,
Lisa,
fun. That's a perfect choice. A perfect choice.
Thank you.
And I want to say to all the mothers and grandmothers out there who are trying hard on this unusual year to make your Christmas special, Merry Christmas to you. And just your presence and your love is all that's needed to make it special. I hope you all have the best Christmas ever.
Thank you, Mary Alice.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Merry Christmas.
It's been so much fun.
Merry Christmas.
God bless us, everyone.
Yes. Yes.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. All done?
All done.
Thank you, girls. Oh, we did it. No nosebleed. Yay.